Welcome to It Matters, where we cut through the noise and dive deep into the issues that really shape our world. This isn't just another political podcast. This is where we call out the lies, expose the corruption, and challenge the status quo. Whether it's dissecting the latest political circus or spotlighting the real heroes fighting for justice, we're here to give you the unfiltered truth. So buckle up. It's time to get real, get informed, and get ready to be honest. This is It Matters. Welcome back to It Matters, and guess who we got with us? Our favorite resident Republican, Joe Walsh. How you doing, man?
Michael! I'm such a fan. It's so good to be with you.
It is always good to be with you. How have you been, and what have you been up to?
Well, isn't it amazing how shit has changed? I mean, imagine
much.
You and I 4 weeks ago having this conversation. 4 weeks ago, I was despondent and depressed.
Absolutely.
Now I'm like overjoyed with what looks like it might happen.
Yeah, I mean, like we were texting and emailing and stuff about the debate performance and Biden. And, look, I got to say, I was shocked as someone who criticized Republicans repeatedly for the way that they talked about the president and kind of where his mental faculties were. But after that debate and then the assassination attempt on Trump, I mean, it couldn't have really looked any worse for Democrats' chances.
Everything, Michael, was going Trump's way. The court rulings. I mean, he was up. Everything was falling his way. The horrible shooting, the assassination attempt. He goes into that convention with a solid lead. But I got to tell you, Michael, and I was depressed. I was in Michigan doing some stuff. And when I found out that he picked J.D. Vance, and for the first time in months, I smiled because I knew he made a big fucking mistake.
Absolutely.
And that began to give me some hope.
What do you think it looked like? Had he picked a Tim Scott, or, I mean, obviously he was never going to pick Nikki Haley, but like he had other choices. And I mean, Marco Rubio was who I was terrified that he was going to pick. I know he was from Florida, so there was the whole whatever, but like Rubio would have moved to, Alaska if it meant he could have run on that ticket.
Rubio, Youngkin.
Yeah.
And I don't rule out Nikki Haley because I do believe there's a part of Trump that wanted to pick her. Imagine what a different, even with Biden getting out, Kamala Harris the nominee, this is still a much different race with any other VP candidate. He tripled down on ugly MAGA. I think because, again, I think Trump's an idiot. It was an arrogant pick. Peter Thiel and Elon and I think a bunch of money guys told him, Don Jr. told him to do it. I have no doubt, Michael, that Trump really regrets that pick, but there's nothing he can do about it.
No, and, it's been interesting. J.D. Vance has really been the focus of a lot of the negativity in the campaign for the last couple weeks. And as much as I think Trump loves that he's not being mocked as much, he hates that Vance is getting the attention, even if it's negative attention. It's why you've seen him go out and do these press conferences, and he's getting ready to do one now that are just train wrecks.
Yeah, Trump's all about he needs his face to be in the news, and he needs the headlines to always be about him. Michael, I'm older than you. You're
really?
A young black man. I'm an old white fart.
I thought you were like 28, 29.
Michael, in my lifetime, I do not remember a VP pick that's been received this negatively. Yeah. Not Sarah Palin. Nothing even comes close. This is killing Trump. I know it is. And then it's the change, right? Like Trump had his campaign against Biden all written for him. In comes Kamala Harris. The Democrats did the right thing. People like you and I, a bunch of us, we did get crap from the Democratic establishment.
Absolutely. Was told you won't work in dim circles anymore. How could you? You're a traitor. It's like,
even when we would say shit, and I'd say stuff like you would, I'd say, If Joe Biden were 151 years old, he still has my
Absolutely.
vote. Doesn't matter to me. But I'm not the typical average voter out there. So how about somebody else? But when that change happened, Michael, again, Trump, like a 4-year-old spoiled kid,
Blowing up.
didn't know how to react and got angry and lashed out, and he's still lashing out.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There was a part of me that thought, okay, Democrats will switch and there will be a light switch moment and people will fall in line, kind of like what's happened. And it was only because I knew Trump couldn't help himself. He had to attack her race. He had to attack her as a woman. And all of the other things that caused her to not do well during that primary race, in 90 days, you don't have time to relitigate that. Like, this is a sprint, not a marathon, and Trump is not focused enough for a sprint.
And why, Michael, it still blows me away. Why were they not prepared for this possibility? And I don't know what you thought, but I knew that when Biden got out, it had to be
there was no
Harris.
question.
It wasn't going to be anybody else, and there was going to be no open primary. Mm-hmm. And everybody was going to rally around her. Trump's people had to have known that.
I think Trump's people did. I mean, Susie Wiles is not stupid. Chris Lasavetis is, I mean, he's not my cup of tea, but like, he's not a dumb guy. And so I think behind the scenes, it's interesting. When I talk to Republicans who are in the Trump campaign and in the Trump circle, their understanding of like what's going on behind the scenes in Democrats, I feel like is the same. There's this real disconnect because the question I got is like, has he been in hospice for the last 6 months? Like, is he going to die before the election? Was this planned a year ago? Like, just this really kind of conspiratorial thing. And I was talking to Colby Hall from Mediate about this on the show. There is this disconnect between Republicans and Democrats. And I think more so with Democrats understanding Republicans because of that Republican ecosphere where you don't have to step outside of it. If all you watch is Fox and Newsmax and listen to, podcasts from, I don't know, whatever right-wing person, then you really don't have the same kind of understanding of what's going on versus Democrats. Like, we're listening to CNN, MSNBC, all that kind of stuff, but it still has a national messaging.
Michael, it's such a great point. The media has always been left of center. Mm-hmm. It's just most journalists. It's why they get into the profession. No. So like I've always known, I grew up ABC, NBC, CBS, all of them. They're generally left of center, mm-hmm. which by the way is why Fox News came into existence to begin with. But you're right. It's only Fox and now Newsmax. It's a very small universe over there. And when you do listen to the mainstream media, even though it's left of center, you're right, there's a range. I mean, like I know, MSNBC and CNN are very
Absolutely.
Very different. And so you can't throw them all in the same bucket.
No, and I think that's where Republicans kind of miss out on trying to understand it. They're just like, oh, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, it's all the same thing. And it's like, MSNBC, we've watched the shift happen. MSNBC moved farther left so that they could compete with Fox. And CNN has decided they're going to stake out the center. And because of clicks and advertising dollars, everybody's got to find that lane so that they can be profitable and not go out of business. And so there's this like tie between money and politics that gets all fucked up.
Is there, Michael Starr Hopkins, is there a center lane that can be profitable, or is the profit only on those two extremes? I don't know.
I mean, News Nation is really trying to have that
Great
center
stuff.
lane.
Great stuff.
The question is, you're right though. I mean, as both of us have podcasts and shows, and I know from my ratings, my analytics, like the more I do hard left guess, the better I do. When I had outside of having like Spicer on, when I have Republicans on, it doesn't do as well. I don't give a shit because I enjoy our, like, not, well, you're a little different in terms of ratings, but like I enjoy having real conversations. So
Exactly.
I have everybody on. But like, how do you navigate that kind of stuff too? Because we have to make livings. And I don't think people understand that.
No, it's they don't. Like, people assume
They think
because
we're
I'm
rich.
out there all the yeah, people think we're rich.
Yeah.
People think because I've been out there all the time and I'm always out there that I'm making money. It's impossible. It's really hard to monetize being a never Trumper conservative, especially someone I'm on my own. I'm doing it on my own. And look, I was making a shitload of money when I was a Trumper on the right.
Yeah, your radio show was killing it.
And the folks on the left do really, really well. I do believe, Michael, that after this election, I think there's going to be a shift. And I think most Americans do want this. Somehow, corporate America, some networks got to put more money behind this. I think News Nation is doing it right. I wish they'd do better. I think CNN wants to do it right.
I think so too.
How do you get people to watch those networks over the MSNBCs and the Foxes? I don't know.
I don't either. And I think it's been really interesting as, you know, I've been kind of exploring the podcast stuff, and I've gotten unplugged from cable, untethered. I've shifted a lot more towards watching things on YouTube, a lot more interviews, a lot more of the programming. And I find myself watching stuff that not only do I not necessarily agree with at first. Sean Ryan is a perfect example. Sean Ryan, for those of you who don't know, is a former Navy SEAL, CIA contractor. He's got a podcast where he interviews a lot of other military people and talks about their missions and things like that. Sean Ryan and I probably don't agree on 90% of things. But his show's really interesting. And I find myself like listening and disagreeing with things, but also learning things that I would never know about. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that with TikTok and with everyone consuming everything on their phone. You know, the DNC, for example, they're going to do they're going to stream everything so that people can watch it vertically on their phone. It's a game changer. And I think we're starting to see this shift where politicians and, you know, corporate media, they can't control people the same way.
Michael, I was in Congress 10 years ago, and it was the be all end all to get your face on CNN or Fox News or whatever. And the audiences were bigger. That ain't the case anymore. And this is only 10 years ago. I can put out my own video, my own thing on YouTube, and get way, way more views than when I do go on CNN. Yeah. And it's not even close. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that cable news itself may be gone within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's when I think of like NBC News now, and the way that they've shifted over and kind of duplicated NBC, but in a streaming platform. It's how you're going to get young people to consume media, because people aren't like sitting on the couch after dinner and watching TV.
Young people don't watch cable news. Young people don't watch CNN or MSNBC.
No, it's just us. It literally is like the DC Beltway, and like,
you're the last generation too. You're an inside player, but your generation is the last.
And I think a lot of that's because of 9/11. My real obsession with cable news happened because of 9/11 and that 5 days after, where there was no TV, like all the cable news networks broke into mainstream coverage and it's all you could watch. And living in DC, I was like, holy shit, there's F-16s flying over my house every day. Is the next bomb coming any minute?
Yeah.
So,
but you can do your own thing and be your own thing in the media now. Whereas before, you had to try to get on TV. Those days are done.
They are. So, transitioning a little bit, you are now part of the Republicans for Harris group.
What the fuck?
I know, right?
12 years ago, I'm a Tea Party
I was just,
musket grabbing dude. You and I are yelling at each other. 12 years later, Michael, I went to the damn Philadelphia rally last
I saw
week.
the pictures.
Her launch rally with Tim Walsh, and I'm thinking to myself with my lovely bride Helene while we're there, surrounded by thousands of smiling Democrats. What the fuck? What a ride this has been.
Yeah.
And it's all about, and we're all different, and that's why this is interesting. So Kamala Harris is supposedly tomorrow going to come out and announce price controls for groceries. Some sort of stupid, bad, terrible policy. And I'm part of Republicans for Harris. And I'm sure a bunch of us Republicans for Harris, some will say they'll applaud the policy. Some will ignore the policy altogether. I will come out and say bad, terrible policy, but I am all on board with Kamala Harris because Donald Trump is a lawless, un-American psychopath. And that's more important than bad policy. That's why I'm with Kamala Harris. I'm jazzed by her in some unique ways because I think she's really interesting. But if you and I were having this conversation and Biden were the nominee, it would be we were Republicans for Biden.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's stopping that thing.
And it's interesting you say that because that's how I felt when Biden was running, that it was stopping Trump at all cost. Part of me believes the reason you've seen her take off so quickly is this message of joy that her and Tim Walsh have put together. And a lot of young people for the first time in their adult life are seeing this message of hope and this message of happiness. And
hey, let me ask you something, young black man. Is this reminiscent? Are you getting the same vibe as Obama in 08?
I was on the Obama campaign in 08. This is exactly like the Obama campaign in 08 in a very compressed version because we got to celebrate the Obama thing for like 18 months. For those of you that don't remember, he kind of had this ascent after he won Iowa. It was just this steady rise. Kamala Harris has just gone up, straight up overnight. And how do you think Republicans who support Trump or Trump himself, how does he deal with this 80 days? Because it feels like he's going to lose his shit and like say some things that really may get the party. I don't know if in trouble is the right word, but do some real long-term damage.
Yeah. I think, and Michael, it's important, people listening to us, Democrats listening to us, I know we're all euphoric right now with how she's doing. This thing, as you know, is really freaking tight.
Oh, yeah.
And it's neck and neck, and it turned on a dime 3 weeks ago. It can turn on a dime again. From what I understand, they're going to try to win in spite of Trump. Republicans are going to try to win in spite of him. They know he's going to do and say his own thing. They're just going to surround that with focusing on what they should focus on if they want to beat her. She's liberal, her policies, she's bad on the economy, bad on immigration, and just do that thing over and over in the battleground states. He can't do that. They're going to try to do that.
But do you think he gets desperate at a certain point? Because like you started to see him revert back to that Trump post 2020 election where he was just tweeting, rambling things that don't make sense, these conspiracy theories. And you've already seen him start to, kind of hint that it's rigged and the election isn't legitimate. And whenever he gets in that territory, it's anything goes.
Well, be clear about something, and this is my biggest opposition to Donald Trump. And when people ask me, Joe, what do you mean by threat to democracy? This is fucking it. He will never accept an election loss. That's a direct threat to democracy. He will. And so, Michael, you're right. No matter how big or small his loss in November, he won't accept it. His supporters won't accept it. Trump has people lined up in certain states who will not certify it, and there will be violence again. And the whole switcheroo from Biden to Kamala Harris has given him a great excuse. Rigged. But I think he's going to stay on this. She'll debate him, right?
Yeah,
There'll be a debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think Like I think in many ways she's a really good candidate because she's attractive, she's really smart,
Hmm.
she's tough. I want to know who she is. I think she's always struggled with
Hmm.
her core. Who am I? I think she's grown, and I hope more of that comes out.
I do too. I think it's hard when you're biracial, when you
Yeah,
grow up in and out of the United States. You know, there is code switching. There, she grew
yeah,
up, in universities. I think it is tough. I will just talk about from like my personal experience, having going in and out of the Black community, in and out of public schools, private schools, affluent areas, non-affluent areas. You do have this identity of, well, I'm one person with Black people and I'm another person in this world. And, her going to Howard, I think really kind of cemented, I don't want to say her Blackness, but like her Black
and
experience.
Michael, I get
Yeah.
that. I get that, and I don't mind any of
Yeah.
that, and that's natural, and that's actually
Mhm.
cool. By the way, she is biracial, and by the way, she is America,
Yes.
right? I mean, my God, father from
Mhm.
Jamaica, mother from India. They meet in California, get married, have a baby. Then she marries a Jewish guy from the
Yeah.
Bronx or from Brooklyn. I mean, that's the American story. I'm talking about like her core set of
Oh,
beliefs.
okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
That's like she's kind of been like, is she really
Mhm.
liberal? Is she really more moderate? I want her to stake out what she believes in, and I think most people will be around where she is.
Yeah. I mean, I think in many ways, she is the blueprint of Barack Obama in that she's a centrist, but understood the dynamics of, coming to power in an urban city that's more liberal. I fall in line with very much that line of Obama-esque, in which I think is now going to be Harris-esque, kind of FDR Democrat who is still tough on international relations, on foreign policy. Like I
Yeah.
think we there is a new emergence of Democrats who I think are humane but are very tough on our national security. And I think Hillary Clinton was kind of the first of that, but wasn't able to articulate that message in like a very soft slash humane way. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Obama was the drone strike king, but he never gets characterized as this murderous person. He's this charismatic person who makes you feel warm inside. And I think
Isn't
that's
that,
about message.
isn't that funny, Michael? Back in the old days when you and I well, you hated me for good
Yes.
reason. And like, 'cause we would call Obama back in the old days, he's a socialist. He's a socialist. I look back on that now. He was so damn
Yeah, I mean,
moderate.
he deported more people than any other Democratic president. He drone strike the shit out of Al Qaeda. Like, not for nothing, but he
Like
drone.
he would have opposed today's squad, the
Yeah,
squad today. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it is the Democrat Party is finding itself right now, and it's been really interesting because
yeah,
you see AOC. I mean, she came to the defense of Biden before he got out.
yeah.
It was actually the progressive wing that defended Biden and the moderates that called for him first. And Pelosi and her, coming back onto the scene really, and being the architect of Harris being able to rise to power. It's a really interesting moment in terms of women coming to the forefront of the
Yeah.
Democratic Party, young people in a new generation, and what it means to be a Democrat.
You and I obviously are different philosophically,
Sure.
politically. We both are all in and want her to win, and we're going to do all we can to help her win. What's your biggest fear or concern that might get in the way of her winning? Like as a political strategist, what do you worry about?
Two things: Israel and Hamas, and what if Bibi does something that just sets the whole region aflame, which, he and Trump were on the phone yesterday. And so I can only imagine what they're plotting. And then I think the second thing is probably a terrorist attack in the United States. Like, that is the thing that would make, and if they came across the southern border, then that's the thing that Democrats, it's going to be hard to make an argument for.
Yeah, I think because again, this election's going to be decided by a dozen people in 3 or 4 states. My biggest concern is that the Trump team's message on the economy and immigration does finally take hold, and she has a hard time pushing back against that. Otherwise, I don't see what they hit her on.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to hit her because one, I mean, they're just not disciplined. Their default keeps going back to these very identity politics hits. And look, I said this when we were talking about whether or not Biden was going to step down. There was a worry about black people supporting her. When she became the nominee, black people are all in. We are more pragmatic than I think anyone gives us credit for. Not to say that black people are monolithic, but we want to make sure if we're going to support someone, we are supporting someone who is going to win and can protect our interests. And so the second she became the nominee and there was no one else out there, we became very defensive of her. And all of these racial attacks, any of the dog whistles, it not only causes us to, kind of put the wagons around her, but you're going to see an overperformance among African Americans because, like, my grandma and her friends, my mom and her friends, originally they were going to vote. Now they're loading up their car. They're grabbing kids that they see at the rec center. They're grabbing kids that they see at the church. Like, they will be taking people to the polls. That's fundamentally different.
Yeah, and look, she's run a masterful 3 or 4 weeks here.
Which is nothing in the scale of what an election season looks like.
Right. She's a very strong candidate, but she's benefiting from something big here. And Nikki Haley, who I can't stand, in January kind of called it. Remember, in January, Nikki Haley said the first party that gets rid of their 80-year-old nominee is going to win. And the Democrats did that, and the Republicans could never do that. And so, because there's so much enthusiasm, nobody wanted that matchup.
Yeah.
And so anybody younger, different, man, there's going to be enthusiasm.
Do you think Haley's ruined her political career for good? Because she endorsed Trump after everyone obviously thought she shouldn't. And now she went on air the other day and criticized Trump for the way that he's running the campaign. She is a mercenary. I mean, she has no support in Republican circles now. Moderate Democrats don't like her. It kind of reminds me of like a Kelly Ayotte.
Well, look, you know, all of us Republicans have had a choice. Yeah. We either embrace him or we shun him. And there's no in between, Michael. And when you publicly oppose Trump, you end your career as a Republican. 100%. Adam Kinzinger and Joe Walsh, we ended our careers. Liz Cheney. There's no in between. You can't be kind of pregnant. And Nikki Haley is trying to be in between. And it's not going to work. Republicans, the base, will never embrace her because she didn't embrace Trump enough. And all of us never Trumpers will always be pissed at her because she didn't have the balls to become Republicans for Harris.
And so what happens down ticket then? Because just like Democrats a month ago were talking about losing the House by 15 and losing the Senate, I mean, I saw a Wasserman report today that has Democrats keeping the Senate and winning back the House. You know, obviously there's a lot of election time left, but at some point, do Republicans start to separate themselves? Because, I mean, if Trump loses this election, is there Trumpism after this?
Well, and see, that's the difference. Yes, because it's not just Trump. Like, why couldn't the Republican Party get rid of their 80-year-old nominee? Because Donald Trump is loved by the base of the party. It's not just Trump. The base of the party is his. If he loses and he wanted to be the nominee in 28, he would be the nominee. I don't think he will or will want to, but yes, I think Trumpism lives. I think MAGA is this party. You and I have talked before. I wouldn't be surprised if a new center-right party comes into existence sooner than people think.
But like, we're not a parliamentary style government. Like, you can't
break that wall down, Michael. Break that fucking wall down. Here's what I think. we're paralyzed by this fucking
Yeah.
race. We were paralyzed by Biden Trump. I think and this is your bailiwick, I think after this election season, start next year, you're going to see a marketplace of big old political reform like we haven't seen in this country in a long, long time. You're going to see potential new parties. You're going to see major efforts to change the way we vote, you're going to see major reform politically in this country.
I mean, I'd like to think that, but there's so much money in keeping the system the way it is. Like
the money's coming.
This idea that we're gonna like switch to a parliamentary system where you're gonna have like 4 or 5 parties that make up consortiums to get majorities. Like I would like to think that was something possible. But when you look at Republicans and the changing demographics, just like people criticize moderate Democrats, like is there a place in the party now for a Joe Walsh Republican, for a Liz Cheney Republican moving forward?
Well, and we're no moderates. Joe Walsh and Liz Cheney are no moderates. There's no place
now, though. You are. I mean, like, you don't think 10 million people should be deported on the first day?
No, you're right.
I know that it hurts, right? You called you a moderate. You're like, how?
Kinzinger and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. I don't think in our lifetime the party would ever welcome someone like me back because we were so publicly opposed to Trump. Mm-hmm. I think you could gradually see some more milquetoast Trump supporters welcomed back. But no, I think if you're an opponent of Donald Trump's now, I don't think there's any room for you. And I don't see the party becoming moderate again. It's been kind of radicalized.
It has. And I just wonder, so I forget who I was talking about this with, but Trump brought a lot of new voters and people who weren't participating in the process. So I have this theory that if Trump is done, if Trump loses and tries to just go and back to being promoter style Trump, those voters don't stay in the political process anymore, that they came in with him and they'll leave with him. And so now you've turned the Republican Party into what people thought it may have been before Trump, which is this regional party that could maybe keep the Senate or maybe win the House, but not control the presidency again.
That's a smart point. I've been saying now for a few years, I think my party, is dying as a national political party. I think it will become a real strong regional rural party. This is why, like, Trump was never going to lose the nomination this year, because even if he'd have walked away, as you said, he would have taken 30 to 40% of his base with him. Republicans were fucked because if he wasn't the nominee, the Republican Party couldn't win without those voters.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the 1980s when you had like Billy Graham Republicans, and Billy Graham carried with him 15%, 20% of the electorate for a national Republican primary, and you had to go kiss Billy Graham's ring. And Billy Graham now, I think, would have been that Trumpism kind of revival tent Republican.
So if one of our two major political parties shrinks as a national party, then Michael, what do you do with all of us center-right people? Do we just remain in this limbo forever?
Honestly, I think you may become powerful in and of yourselves, because you look at national elections, like you talked about, everything's won in the margins. It's won 10,000 votes in Michigan, 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Your vote, yes, one person, one vote, but your moderate, kind of that independent, politically non-affiliated vote almost counts for like 10 times the vote nationally. So you and Liz Cheney and Kinzinger and all these people, you kind of become more powerful now. I mean, Republicans for Harris, out of all the groups, maybe only behind black women and black men for Harris, may have the most influence.
Yeah, and that, again, this is why Kamala Harris has a tough job, because her coalition is much more difficult to keep together. You're talking from Republicans for Harris all the way to progressives over there, and she's got to keep everybody jazzed.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are a big tent party, for better or for worse. I think it works out in the long term for us. But you're right. You know, you and I have talked about things like Israel and Netanyahu and how complicated it is, and her having to walk this tightrope right now of dealing with the government of Israel and Bibi versus trying to assist the people of Israel and make sure that Palestinians are given, or not given, but are afforded protection and aid and humanity as they should be. Like, how do you balance?
That's a tough one. That's a tough issue because that issue divides the Democratic coalition. Plain
at its fundamental. I mean, that is one of the few issues that will just fracture the party, and it's what Bibi knows.
And even Biden. I'm idiotically off the charts pro-Israel. So nobody's pro-Israel enough for me. But even Biden himself had to dance this dance, and he generally did a pretty good job. And Biden's pro-Israel. There are a lot of moderate Jews and Jewish Democrats, Michael, that talk to me who just don't want to go there with her yet.
No.
And she needs to come out and say something strong about Israel, but I know politically she's got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing, the default answer of like, look, I can't be anti-Semitic. My husband is Jewish. It's like, oh, my best friend's black. Like, I can't be racist. It'll work for 80 days, but like, there's got to be a bigger plan. I have yet to go to Israel, and it's like at the top of my bucket list.
You will love it, Michael.
I think you and I need to plan a trip and go.
Oh my God.
Because like there's the religious side that, you know, I want to go and see all of the religious sites, but really the cultural aspect of it and I want to see the history and honestly, a lot of the sad parts about what's going on too, to understand the dynamics. So many people talk about this stuff, but haven't seen it, haven't been around it. And I
love it. I've been, and I want to retire and die in Israel. I love it.
What is it about Israel that just you feel so connected with?
It's this little sliver of desert in the middle of this sea of tyranny. And everywhere you go, Michael, it's just like a little miracle. Like it's just so entrepreneurial, and it's all being done on this ancient sacred land. There's always a great vibe. They're building businesses. It's just an energetic place, and it's all being done on this little sliver of sacred ancient land. It's just fascinating.
My mom went a couple years ago. Pictures are beautiful. It is at the top of my list. So yeah, we're going to get there and maybe you and me will hang out there.
Love that.
Well, you've got to get ready for the DNC, as do I. We are going to talk in a couple weeks and check in and see where we are at the state of the race. Any predictions over the next couple of weeks? State of the race. What's the craziest thing you think Trump will do?
Well, that's a tough one, Michael. I honestly don't know.
It's like asking you the lottery numbers.
I am looking forward to a debate between these two because I fundamentally don't believe he will know how to handle her on a stage at all.
And I'm terrified of a debate because
really
I am. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, Trump, like as a lawyer, the most terrifying thing is what you don't know. And everything about Trump's performance, you don't know. You don't know. You know he's not going to stick to talking points. You know he's not going to make cogent arguments. It's going to be splatter against the wall. The hardest thing to do when you are based in facts, when you're based in like a real argument and you're prepared, is to argue with it. You know, when we go on air and it's you and me, we can have great segments. But you go on with like, I don't know, Caroline Levitt or like any of those people who just throw nonsense. There's so much thrown at you. You don't know how to decipher through the bullshit and pick one thing out and make an argument. And that's really hard for her.
Biden was utterly incapable of that. She is. remember, Hillary won the debates, but Hillary lost.
Yeah, because nobody liked her.
And yeah, the advantage that Kamala has as opposed to Hillary is Kamala's very likable.
Until she's not. That my worry is that a strong black woman, right, everybody loves a strong black woman until they don't. Until it happens.
Michael, here's the test then. Young black man, old white guy. I loved what she said at that rally a week ago.
So did my dad.
I loved it.
So did my dad. Did you? No. I did. It's this uncomfortableness because I also, when Obama would do it, it is a little dismissive to young progressives, and you do need young progressives, but they were very smart in immediately putting out that she had met with progressives before the event. That's how you put the stamp on that. It's not, she didn't dismiss them because she met with them before. So the combination of that I thought worked. But at the DNC, it's going to be tough.
I like it when she's different. When she's tough, I kind of like that. But that's the balance of she's got to figure out how to like keep older generation happy and show that she can smack down certain groups at times, and then she's also got to balance out keeping young people excited and smacking down, the older generation every once in a while. It is a hell of a balance. I think only one of the U.S. gymnasts can do it. You're right. And by the way, Michael, Trump doesn't have to worry about any of this shit because he doesn't care, and he doesn't care about any of this stuff. Yeah,
it's going to be a hell of a race. So you and I are going to connect in a couple of weeks. Miss you, buddy.
Thank you, Michael.
Miss you. Thanks for being with me today. Share this episode with others, like and review it, and please keep learning all you can so that you can make an informed voting decision this year. Come back next week for more Truth in Politics. I'm Michael Starr Hopkins, and this is It Matters.